Conflict brings a lot of dysfunctions at both the individual and interpersonal levels. In this video, I propose to list some of these dysfunctions caused by conflicts. Let's start with the individual level. Conflicts deteriorate both the emotional well-being of people and their cognitive functioning. At the affective level, I already stressed this when we define conflict. It has a strong emotional component. Remember what Jones and Butker said? To recognize that we are in conflict is to recognize that we have been emotionally shaken. And the emotions involved are not neutral. What we are talking about in a conflict situation is anger, frustration, sadness, guilt, and contempt. In short, emotional reactions that are largely negative and therefore detrimental to our psychological well-being. It is because conflict generates negative emotion and harm our well-being that our motivation to manage these conflicts is so important. We want to return to a state of satisfactory well-being. The emotional component of conflict is particularly problematic when it starts to take up too much space and individuals find themselves in an emotional flood. Emotional flooding describes a moment when the system is so overloaded with emotions that the individual is no longer able to function or think properly, effectively. Flooding usually occurs when a fundamental aspect of our identity has been affected, such as when the individual feels unfairly attacked or deeply misunderstood. Such flooding can also occur when individuals obsessively ruminate on a negative patch in their life. The negative emotional charge of conflict has important consequences for individuals' cognitive functioning. In particular, it significantly increases analytical errors and biases. When this load becomes an overload, as in the case of flooding, all other considerations become virtually obsolete, and the decisions that are made are only made in reaction to this overload. Even when individuals are fully aware that the decisions that they make will be detrimental for them. In addition to affecting cognitive and emotional functioning, conflict also substantially change the way people communicate. First, because it reduces the amount of communication, the quantity that flows. Parties in conflict talk to each other less and less. Second, it also reduces the quality of those communications. When parties do talk to each other, it is either to insult one another or to reiterate the same argument over and over again and reaffirm their incompatibility. The more intense the conflict, the more blurred it also becomes, because related issues are systematically added to the initial topic of the dispute, to the point where the parties are no longer able to identify the original source of the conflict. Blurred also occurred because the party cannot help involve other people in their conflict. Friends, families, colleagues, superiors. It is a whole relational and social system that ends up getting involved in a disagreement that only concerned two individuals. Finally, conflicts are particularly destructive when they result in inflexible behaviors. The more intense the conflict, the more likely the parties are to rigidify their position, and the more likely they are to enter one of two major negative spirals: the avoidance cycle and the escalation cycle. We will come back to these two cycles in more detail in the next module. Let us simply note at this point that the destructive cycles are largely the result of inflexibility and of the rigidification of the parties in their positions.